So we talked about disease, and the fact that you're all here watching this video means that you got over it, unless you have a disease right now. But the fact that you can watch this means that your body recovered from that disease, so you're better, or is working on recovering from a disease. So we want to talk about how that works, and your body uses something called the immune system, which pretty much all of us know about the immune system, or you've heard the term. The interesting thing about the immune system is that unlike most systems, the immune system has no real organs to speak of. The circulatory system has the heart, and the nervous system has the brain, and the excretory system has the kidneys. But the immune system doesn't have any real organs. It's more of this collection of cells that do different things. And let's take a look at some of those. Part of your immune system is something called non-specific defense. And I like to equate your immune system functioning to a war, where in a war, you have enemies and you have friends, if you will. And in order for those enemies to get to you, or to keep them from getting to you, you would create non-specific defenses like a wall around your castle or a moat. Or you might put up a bunch of satellites nowadays to watch for incoming missiles or incoming airplanes or whatever. So in your body, you have non-specific defenses too, like your skin and your mucous membranes in your nose and in your mouth. Okay, things that produce mucus that'll trap things that get in. You have some kinds of cells and chemicals. You have certain white blood cells that eat any foreign invader. They do what we call, remember this from first semester, endocytosis, where it wraps itself around it and engulfs it and then digests it. You have inflammation. Many of you maybe have hurt something or cut yourself or something like that, and you've gotten swelling and redness and heat. Inflammation, you see the word flammable right there. Red, hot, swollen is inflammation, okay, because of the release of a chemical called histamine, which we'll come back to a little bit later. Fever is an example of inflammation, except it's your body-wide. That's another non-specific defense, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later, too. So in order for your body, okay, let's say none of your non-specific defenses work. So then what? Well, your body has to be able to recognize a foreign thing, right? If you're fighting a war and you don't know what the enemy looks like, you're going to have a tough time fighting the war. Well, it just so happens that on the surface of every cell in your body are things called antigens. So this is a little diagrammatic here, but you see different kinds of antigens on the surface of this white blood cell. Every person has every cell has different antigens on its surface. And so your body knows which ones are yours. So invaders will have foreign antigens, things your body doesn't recognize as being from you. Because foreign invaders have a different antigen than your cells, your body can recognize that as foreign. Example, blood type. In blood type, there are two different kinds of antigens, A and B. If you have antigen A on your surface, you have blood type A. If you have antigen B on your surface, you're blood type B. If you have both antigens on your surface, you're blood type AB. If you have no antigens on your surface, you're blood type O. Another term, pathogen, is a foreign substance that actually causes disease. Many foreign things get into your body that aren't supposed to be there. You put food into your body every day. Okay, that's foreign stuff. You're eating foreign cells, but they aren't pathogenic. A pathogen is one that will cause disease. The term allergy, related to the term allergy, is the term allergen, is something that's supposed to be harmless, but you get a reaction of your immune system to it. You may get a fever, you may get swelling, you may get a runny nose. So, non-specific defenses, we talked about already. Then your body activates what's called specific immunity. If it recognizes a foreign invader, it activates specific immunity. You create immunity to certain pathogens, certain things that cause disease. There are two types of specific immunity. There are two kinds of cells in your body. These are white blood cells. White blood cells, called T cells, can destroy cells that contain the pathogen inside. Now, I'm going to give you an analogy to this in a minute. You also have cells called B cells that are another kind of white blood cell. B cells kill viruses and bacteria that are floating around in your body. And B cells use sort of like bullets called antibodies that destroy disease particles. This is sort of like in a war where invaders come and they hide out in houses. So if they hide out in houses, you don't know that they're there because they're hiding. And so like in the Afghanistan war, many of the people we're looking for are hiding in caves and stuff like that. Well, in your cells, your bodies, your cells that have the pathogen inside can create a signal to T cells that they have that inside of them, and the T cells will kill them. B cells are like the soldiers looking for the things out running around, the invaders that are out running around, not in houses or in buildings or in caves. And they kill those things that are out floating around in your body. T cells are called T cells because they're made in a gland called the thymus gland, which is in your neck right here. You may never have heard of it. B cells are called B cells because they're made in the bone marrow. That's kind of an FYI. So a quick general overview then. Pathogen gets into your body, activates specific defense. There are two kinds of specific defense. B cells can be activated. B cells produce these things called antibodies, and we'll take a look at them in a second. T cells get activated, and they directly kill these things that are inside. Let's take a look at how antibodies work. What the cell does is it produces things called antibodies. B cells do. Those antibodies will kind of grab on to a bacteria or grab on to virus particles and make them clump together. In the case of the virus particles, clump them all together. Okay, and now these viruses can't do anything. They're all clumped together. They can't invade cells and reproduce like they do. And this bacteria gets all these antibodies on it, and they poke holes in it. And then water goes into the bacteria, and it explodes. That's how antibodies kill things. Okay, antibodies are made by B cells. So here's a question. Why do we only get to chicken pox once? Many of you probably haven't even had chicken pox because you had a vaccine. So why do we get things like that? Why do we get a shot for the cold? Why don't we get a shot for colds? Because the cold seems to keep coming back. We all get colds all the time. And yet we go get shots for different things, but not a cold. Why is that? Well, let's talk about what happens in you. This is a graph of what happens when your body meets a bacteria or virus. And this is a graph of what happens the first time. Primary response is your first time you met it. Secondary response is the second time. So let's say you actually got the chicken pox. What happened in your body, if you see on this side of the graph, it says relative antibody concentration in blood plasma. By the way, you need to know this graph. Antibodies are made by B cells. So this is kind of a measure of how many B cells and how many T cells you have that will react to that virus. So you got the chicken pox, and for about a week, nothing happened. Well, something is happening. The virus is infecting your cells and starting to reproduce. And your skin is starting to break out, and you're starting to feel kind of crappy with a sore throat and maybe some runny nose and all that. And then after a week, now the symptoms are starting to appear pretty good. The virus is really starting to attack you. You produce B cells. Your body starts to produce B cells. And it produces them for about 2 weeks. Then what happens? Well, notice that it starts to go back down. Why do you think that is? Well, yeah, because your body is, now all these B cells have attacked the virus, and the virus is gone. So, because the virus is gone, your body doesn't need to make B cells anymore. However, notice that this doesn't go back to zero. Your body keeps around things called memory cells. This is a very important idea. These memory cells remember the bacteria or virus. In this case, the chickenpox virus. They remember you had it. And so you're around, you just got over the chickenpox, you go back to school, and you're around Billy. And Billy's got the chickenpox all of a sudden. He's in school, and all of a sudden he's not feeling good. He's sneezing, spreading the virus around, and it gets in you. Well, look what happens. Look at the difference in the time and the scope of the response. You get this incredibly higher response. You get this incredible increase in the number of B cells produced. And it happens in about 3 days instead of 2 weeks. And so you get over it. Your body kills a virus before it can even get started. And then notice after the secondary response how slow they go away. So to get into school, many of you had to have something called a vaccine. This is directly related to the last slide we looked at. You went to the nurse, and she said, oh, you're only going to feel a little poke. And I hate vaccines. They actually kind of hurt, I think. But I'm kind of a wuss when it comes to needles. So the nurse gives me this look like this one is, like, it's only going to hurt a little bit. Then she jams that needle in you and fills you up. But the reason you had to do that is you had to get a vaccine. The vaccine is, a term here, is inoculated. When you got inoculated, and you had to get a certain number of vaccines for school. You had to get the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. You now can get the chickenpox vaccine. You got to get diphtheria vaccine. All these are diseases that used to be childhood diseases. But you were given a dead or weakened virus. That's what you were given. So the virus couldn't hurt you, but it stimulated an immune response. You got a primary immune response. And so you made B cells and T cells, but the virus can't hurt you. So when the virus comes again, in real life, your body recognizes it much quicker and gets rid of it. Sorry about that. One part of the immune system, kind of, is something called the lymphatic system. And when, maybe you never wondered this, but if you have a swollen ankle, where does all the liquid go? Because it's liquid. If you feel it, it's kind of squishy around there. Where does that go? Well, the lymphatic system collects waste from the fluid between cells and puts it back into the circulatory system. Along the way are things called lymph nodes. Lymph nodes, sometimes your parent feels your neck and says you have swollen glands. Those are actually swollen lymph nodes in your neck that are collecting waste and junk and dead cells and things like that. So when you have a sore throat and your glands get swollen, that's because your lymphatic system is collecting all this junk from between your cells. The last thing I want to talk about with this is HIV. HIV is also known as AIDS. It's a human immunodeficiency virus. It infects T cells. So HIV works pretty slowly, but because it affects T cells, remember, are the cells that help kill viruses and bacteria hiding out in other cells. So what happens with HIV, and we'll talk about this more in class, is that T cells are destroyed, so you die from diseases you don't normally get when you're young. This is how we diagnosed AIDS in the first place in the 80s, is people that were 25 and 24 and 23 were dying of the disease called AIDS. What they were really dying from are things like pneumonia and cancer and some kinds of rare cancers that they just were never seen in young people. So that's a kind of an overview of the immune system. As I said, we'll talk about HIV more in class.